Learning goal: to learn about the atrocities that occurred during World War II. The Holocaust. Anti-Semitic feelings towards the Jews began to climax in the later half of the 19th and first part of the 20th centuries. Hitler believed German blood was superior and Jews would contaminate German blood. To ensure German purity, it was their duty to save the German race from further contamination. Hitler therefore set out to create the Aryan race, tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. Nazis first attacked the Jews with slanderous, obscene language, physical beatings, and sometimes murder before attaining power in Germany. Number 1, Nuremberg Laws in September 1935. These laws forbade people of Jewish origin to marry or to have relations with Aryans. Expulsions of Jews from the government universities and cultural life. In November 1938, a Jewish boy, crazed by his people's suffering, murdered a German diplomat. This incident served as a pretext for the Nazis to begin their systematic roundup of the Jews. Kristallnacht, Night of Broken Glass, an attack on Jews in Germany and their property. Jewish shops were looted, and many Jews were physically beaten. 3. Deportation to ghettos in 1939. Jews were rounded up and forced to live in ghettos until the concentration camps and death camps were ready to exterminate them. Over 930 Jews flee Germany on the SS St. Louis, attempting to emigrate to any other country. They are denied entry into Cuba, the United States, and Canada before returning to Europe, where the majority of them end up in countries that will be later taken over by the Nazis. 3. Deportation to ghettos in 1939. Jews were rounded up and forced to live in ghettos until the concentration camps and death camps were ready to exterminate them. Concentration camps. These were camps where Jews and POWs would be used for hard labor, often worked to death. 5. Death camps. In 1943, Hitler begins implementing the final solution to his Jewish problem in Europe. Every Jewish person is relocated to a forced labor or extermination camp. Mass killing of Jews used Zyklon B poison gas began at Auschwitz-Birkenau in Bunker 1, the Red Farmhouse. Chelmno, Treblinka, Auschwitz-Birkenau, Belzec, and Sobibor were all death camps where Jews were slaughtered. The organized persecution of the European Jewry is known in history as the Holocaust, meaning burnt offering. Over 6 million Jews were murdered. Many of those murdered were women and children. Allied forces knew about the Holocaust as early as 1942, but did nothing as it was not a military priority to save the Jews from extermination. 12 million people were killed in total, including Russian POWs, Polish POWs, gypsies, mentally and physically challenged, and homosexuals. After the defeat of the Axis powers, Nazi leaders still alive were tried for war crimes referred as crimes against humanity at the Nuremberg trials. Charged included Himmler, Goebbels, Göring, and Eichmann. Sterilization and murder of mentally and physically handicapped. Hitler believed that those who were mentally or physically handicapped were not part of the Aryan race, and he wanted them eliminated from the German population. Under Nazi rule, mentally and physically handicapped people were forced into sterilization programs, unable to have children. An estimated 300,000 to 400,000 people were victims of Hitler's sterilization laws. Hitler also gave doctors permission to carry out euthanasia orders on those living in mental asylums and other institutions. The code name for this was T4. Many died by lethal injection or in gas chambers. Allied bombing of Dresden. In February 1945, there was a massive bombing campaign ordered for the German city of Dresden, a railway distribution center. This bombing campaign is considered a war tragedy because there was little military strategic value. The only logical military strategy was that the Allied forces were trying to break civilian morale. The tactic of destroying cities that had a minor military significance and inflicted so much destruction and death as the war was coming to a close was considered reprehensible, as 40,000 to 50,000 civilians died. Internments of Japanese Canadians. The most significant events at home during World War II was the internment of Japanese Canadians and other enemy aliens. War Measures Act, the government had sweeping powers to decide who were loyal Canadians and who were not. If a person was seen as a security risk, then that person and their family could be sent away to an internment camp. Enemy aliens. Canada also rounded up refugees fleeing Nazi persecution, including Jews, Germans, Italians, but the most massive internment program involved the Japanese on the west coast of Canada. When Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese on December 7, 1941, shockwaves hit the world. That same day, the RCMP swept through Japanese communities in British Columbia and began to arrest people. 38 Japanese were arrested because they were deemed to be dangerous and troublemakers. Over the next few months, all Japanese nationals, people born in Japan but living in Canada, and Canadian citizens of Japanese descent were imprisoned under the War Measures Act. Japanese were taken from their homes, packed into trains, and sent to internment camps in the interior of British Columbia. Their property was expropriated by the government and sold. Government kept the money. Some men were assigned work on road crews in northern BC and Ontario. Others were used as farm laborers in Alberta and Manitoba. Any person who resisted were considered to be prisoners of war and sent to the POW camp in Angler, Ontario. Following the war, the Japanese were released and free to carry on their lives. However, many Japanese emigrated to other countries because of the prejudice and distrust they received by Canada. The Canadian government made a formal apology finally in 1989 to the internment Japanese, and each family was given $20,000 for their property, which had been taken by the government.